Okay. So thanks for dialing in and logging into this webinar. It's a pretty exciting one for us. Basically looking to start to get access to the data that's been captured into UniPhi over the many years. And this is getting to the pointy end now. What will we've been basically at it now for about 12 months and beta for about 3 months now, a plug-in to Power BI, and the 1st of November we'll go live with a production release of that, which I'll be demonstrating elements of in this presentation. So Power BI is a visualization tool and an analysis tool. Enables you to generate business intelligence based off some data source. The issue with Power BI has always been growing the data set and being able to refresh that data set. So they're the challenges that we believe we've overcome. And basically now, you know, a lot of our clients have quite considerable databases full of data, and they've been putting information into it for some as many as 10 years. And you know, there's always been a challenge to then be able to get the information out that they wanted to in the way that they wanted to analyze that. But definitely we've solved the big data problem with regards to capturing that data and having it grow over time. And the way we've been able to do that is through a distributed data capture model. So in this diagram, you've got many happy users beavering away on their stuff on a daily basis. And because UniPhi is so broad in its functionality, that could be anything from logging an issue to raising an invoice, to doing a timesheet, to creating a contract and everything in between. And that information is beavering away up into the cloud and into that big database that we had on the previous slide. And so, you know, through that, over time, you can generate quite a lot of information. And there goes some data just then, subliminally. I think there's more to come. Oh, there it is. And, you know, as an example of that, if you look at, for example, timesheeting, we had one client with 500 staff. If they averaged 5 activities per day, they'd be creating 2,500 data points every day, or 550,000 data points per year. Smaller deployments, 20 engineers working on inspections and surveillances. They may do 5 inspections a day, and in those inspections there might be 20 observations that they would capture in a unified document. There's 2,000 endpoints per day, or 440,000 per year. One cost manager just on their own. We had recently a cost manager sign up just for themselves on their own, in their own business at this beginning. They may do 20 cost plans in a year. Those cost plans may have 40 elements to them. That's still 800 data points. So quite quickly, with a distributed data capture across, you know, very many and varied data entry points, as I mentioned before, issues, risks, costs, contracts, timesheets, resource planning, document management, metrics, you name it, you get quite considerable amount of data, and that data gets matrixed, if that's the term. It gets created into a cube basically by the metadata that's associated to it. So whenever someone puts in a timesheet entry, they might only put in one data entry. It could be 1 hour against one activity, but that activity has a project, that project has a sector, they're in a role on that project. There's key metrics associated to that project, for example, and potentially the fully enclosed covered area, or the gross floor area of the building, the number of floors to that building, the car parking spaces. All this other data is already there around that. And so you can start to get analytics and intelligence around what's going on. And you can basically come up with limitless questions and then interrogate the data to find out what the answers are. That wasn't possible until we started to get more seamless integration with BI tools. Our first go at this actually was our Profit Cube, which we released in 2009, which was built off an analysis services layer and an Excel interface that enabled you to access the UniPhi financial information. But this is exponentially bigger and much easier for the end user. So yeah, that's the problem we had before, is that you know, there's over 450 tables in the unified database. The business logic that does things to those tables is embedded at different levels. It's an N-tier architecture. The languages are obscure and unknown to many. Not many people are able to write SQL, for example. Just bear with me a sec. I'm getting a text message from people saying they can't hear me. Okay. Doesn't seem to be any problem here. Hello. So there does appear to be an issue. How's that? That might be better. Still seems a bit flaky. Hang on, I'll unmute everyone and see who can hear me. Just checking in with the people on the webinar. Can anyone hear me to start?
Yes, Mark, I can hear you.
Okay,
yeah.
So,
yeah.
All right. So I'll just write back to the people who can't hear me and say the others can. 1 second. I'll then unmute you. Mute you all again. Okay. Sorry about that. I was in full flow too. It would have been better if it was. Okay. There is a chat function if that happens to you. Please feel free to write to me and let me know that you're having a bit of trouble. So, you know, around that we used to do Excel extracts from the reporting services, but that's prone to error and it's static. Once you extract it once, you can't refresh it. And with the old Profit Cube, you could do extraction, transform, and load, which is what IT departments did for the, you know, most of the 2000s to put into data warehouses. They tend to be inflexible to change because it creates quite a lot of development from a software developer in-house who then may leave or not document things very well or not understand the changes that happen to our core product over time. So thankfully now we have this thing called an API. And that's the big change basically that's happened. And that's an acronym which back in the days I used to hate, but use more and more these days, standing for Application Programming Interface. And what it enables us to do is create endpoints that are human readable. And all the business logic that basically takes the data out of those 450 tables, puts the business rules applied to that and presents it to an end user is done for you. And then it gets presented via these things called endpoints. And although there's more than what's on the screen there's just a sample of some of the UniPhi endpoints. And if you read them, I'm sure everyone on this call could understand the sorts of data that might sit below those endpoints. So, you know, project metadata, what sector it's in, what project type it is, what life cycle phase, budgetary information, cash flow information, contract information, etc. So in a moment, you'll see those endpoints in action, but that's really the big change that's happened. It's enabling us to present this information to you and a really exciting improvement in the ability to analyze the data that you've captured in UniPhi. And as I said, some clients with quite large data sets been built up over the years. The other element of Power BI is visualization. So I'm going to show you analysis and visualization, but you know, the most exciting thing for us is the analysis, I think. But obviously, once you have defined what sort of data you want to report on, there'll be far more flexibility for our clients to build their own visualizations for their various stakeholders, whether it be they senior management or customers or contractors and the like. And so, you know, pretty visualizations that display what's going on in your business will be possible. And branded, as you can see, however you like, not just you know, the UniPhi branding. Okay, I'll come back to that one in a moment, but first I'll just flick into the Power BI. So what I'm going to do is take you through some of the stuff to do with Power BI first, and then I'm going to explain how all the data got in there and, you know, how you share that information and basically utilize this information after that through a slide diagram that hopefully helps. It's been one of the challenges for us actually is to exactly identify how we, what architecture and what security models and all the rest of it we use for this sort of stuff, which, as I said, going live on the 1st of November, we're happy with now and we've actually been able to do. So it's taken a little while, but we think we're there now. So This is the actual Power BI dashboard that I showed as a screenshot in the PowerPoint presentation. And what you'll see over on the right-hand side, if I just minimize that, and that is those endpoints that you saw in the PowerPoint slide as well. So what will happen is you'll get access to a file in Power BI that you can open up, and it will already have these endpoints configured in the application, and you'll be able to start to play. The good thing about this analysis is it's read-only information. You can go nuts, do what you like. You can't really hurt any of the, well, you can't hurt any of the data that sits within UniPhi. It's all about interrogation of that and finding out clues as to what's going on in your business. So what I'm going to do now is just go through two analytical examples. Well, one analytical example, one visualization example, and then I'll take you through the workflow that got that data into the system, and then I'll finish on actually creating a new report out of the system from scratch. So that's basically what we'll go through in the next half an hour. Okay, so if I switch for a moment back into the UniPhi application, it's going to be quite important for people who use the Power BI tool to have a fairly decent familiarization with UniPhi and those endpoints. Even though those endpoints are human readable and logical, it's helpful to understand the data set that sits in here. So what I'm looking at the moment is, and I probably might have timed out, so let me just refresh the screen, I'm good, is a little program of works for a retail organization. And you can see what parent-child's going through there. It's a cafe. They've got a series of, it's obviously a franchise cafe, a series of places, and they're doing a coffee machine upgrade program. They're doing some signage upgrade, and there's some store refurbishments in there. So that's the structure of the information we're dealing with. Now, in UniPhi, maybe some people aren't aware that you've got this new-ish, been around for about 18 months, tasks view within the portfolio dashboard. And within that, you can filter on milestones. And, you know, you get yourself a nice list of milestones and see when things are happening and when they're due. Now, one of the strategies of a retail organization is to try and, you know, touch a shop once a year, if possible. So they're going to, this is a portfolio management problem. They're trying to organize and make sure that each location is only going to be touched once. Now, in UniPhi typically, and I'm a table person, which is probably why it's designed that way, you would use these tables to try and analyze that information. You can sort by the project name, and or you could actually filter for the location one at a time by going to the location tab and selecting the specific location that you wanted to look at, and just see when these milestones were going to happen. And you can see one here is not happening at all, which means it needs to be updated. But you're hoping that all of that is generally around the 1st of April 2019, which it isn't. And you could fix it. However, that could take time. It's not visual. It's data oriented. If we go back to our Power BI dashboard, you see a whole group of tabs down here. And again, this is the thing that's unique to UniPhi, is that we haven't even finished yet. We'll go on for another 20 tabs before we release this to the marketplace. And the range of information is quite extraordinary due to these endpoints and the breadth of our application. So, you know, you can integrate those things into a summary dashboard that has cash flows and timings and other things, or you can focus on a specific function like this particular one does here. And so this is a timeline visual, and there's a marketplace in Power BI you can go to try and find new visuals and play around with them. And this is a pretty cool one here. And so what it does is it basically shows milestones in this instance. You can build it to be whatever you want, but this instance, these are milestones that are happening across that retail organization. These are the locations, and you can see how it's interactive. You can click on one and it'll highlight that particular one. And as a visualization tool, you could come in here and you can imagine if you had 100 shops, each shop is its own color. And what you're looking for is for those dots to be aggregated around the same time. And you can see in this instance, we haven't. got it right. We've got, you know, the October and then January and then February for the 60 Collins Street shop. So we want to try and touch it once. This is a visualization tool to get a feel for whether we're achieving that sort of thing. And, you know, from that, basically that data, what I could do is have the UniPhi application on a separate screen if I've got two monitors, or, you know, tab back to it like I'm going to do now. And basically, hang on, I better get my analysis right first. Go into the 60 Collins Street project location, sorry. So I'll just get rid of that location. Click into here, go to locations. And then basically go into each one of these projects and look at why those dates are happening. Now, within that, as you drill in and you find more information out, I'm just going to go back to the program again, guys, just to jump around a little bit. But we've got 3 projects here for that. We're looking to get those dates to be harmonized. One of the things, again, that you may not be aware of, I'm just did a slight hack with the regions and called it retail for this particular presentation, but just want to get all the projects in my view now. I'm just going to go to the issues module. And, you know, issues sometimes get labeled activities, and you can see our 60 Collins Street one here. It's got this signage installation, and basically what we're looking to see is if we can get this thing to happen in January 2019, which is basically where we had it coming in this first red. So I'm going to try and push that back out to there, and then the third red probably okay there, and we'll have reds around here. Now, in analysing the information in UniPhi, I've come across this activity, and you would know how you're operating a business and that this activity exists. And basically what we've got here is a little project of work. You can imagine, you know, going out to these sites and doing small little projects, and lots of them. If you had 100 stores, you know, you've got to get the equipment to site. You've got to do the installation on the weekend and or out of hours, and basically get your new site branded in the way that you're currently branding. And we're trying to push that out. Now, one of the things you'll notice on this particular issue is it's linked to the practical completion milestone, which is the one that's showing us in the Power BI system. And so if I say, okay, I don't want that installation to happen there anymore, I'm going to push that out. You can do it like that, or hit edit in line, and just basically going to push it out into January. And so when you change an issue action, what it does is actually changes the issue due date, because you can't finish a due date before an action, obviously. So if an action is later than the due date automatically pushes out. That's linked to the practical completion milestone. So when I go to the summary screen and I go into the signage for 60 Collins Street, which was the project, you can see that date now is the 17th of January 2019. So that milestone has been updated. And if I go, I mean, the other way to have done it would have been just to go to the sub-nav where it says milestone and keyed it in there. But if you do have interrelationships, that sort of thing can happen. I think we're reading baseline date, so actually it doesn't have to read baseline date in the dashboard, but I think it is to get this to work right. I actually need to change that one. But that's the other place you could have changed it. And you can see that can also link to your stage gates as well, and have those dates automatically push out. So that data's been captured in UniPhi now. If I go back to the Power BI dashboard, what I need to do is hit refresh. And what you'll see is it'll load up all the different endpoints. It'll do all of them in one go. It's not contextualized to the bit that you're looking at. And load the model. And then refresh my little timeline. And the dots have moved, but this one here, I must have been looking at the wrong one. Coffee machine upgrade, 60 Collins Street is still in October, so I didn't quite get my red dots. Hopefully it demonstrated the point though, in that this visualization tool, if you had, imagine a lot more dots there, and I've got a program of works that's got 100 milestones in the timeline. Basically what happens is it's no longer a single line. Where it overlaps, it just becomes a fatter timeline. And I think it's an easier visualization potentially than a Gantt chart. There are some other crazy little things you can do. You can radial the timeline there, but mainly what we're looking at from a visualization perspective on that particular analysis question is to get a cluster of the same color in the same area. Another thing you could do is in this instance, and I'll just go back to timeline, is, you know, that's basically looking at it from the perspective of I want to be touching these shops once a year, so therefore I want the colors to be, you know, collated together when I've got the legend as being location. However, I might also have the logic of one of the types of these upgrades, or sorry, types of these projects is a refurb project. That's a piece of metadata. So instead of having the location as the legend, I can change that and have, so you can see over here, you've got all your fields and you've got what you're including in this particular visualization. So we've got the milestone, we're taking its baseline date. If I wanted, instead I could have had the actual finish date, or I could have had the forecast finish date and just replace those there. So, oops, just select forecast finish date, put it there, and then this will update with those dates instead. We have a problem with those dates because we've got some that don't have them. So you need to go back to your base data and make sure that the people who are managing their projects, you can see how it parallels when you don't have any information, or when you've got lots of dots, it'll do parallel, so just fatten up. I'm just going to go back to my baseline date now. You can actually create your own little Gantt chart, you know, start and end dates as well. But what I want to do now is I want to analyze the refurbishment aspect. So if one way I can do that is to change this category location description here to be project type. And so project type is just another field there. I just place there. And then I've now got maintenance, marketing, and refurbish. And, you know, if you've got a maintenance job, and if I was to analyze it on the project as well, and when I click on this, it'll tell me the project. What I'd be looking at here is projects where they've got maintenance coming on after a refurbishment. Doesn't make much sense. Automated maintenance systems, it could be that you're going out there to put the signage on again, even though the signage would have already happened as part of the marketing, or the refurbish project that happened before it. So again, visualization tools to see yellow before blue, what's happening there, is that right? 60 Collins Street refurbish, 60 Collins Street coffee machine upgrade. Again, doesn't make sense. You wouldn't put the coffee machine upgrade after the refurbish, that'd be part of it. So you can use these tools to answer those sorts of questions and those sorts of analytics. And the time taken to actually do that is literally just drag across a different field and have a look at it. So yes, you need to understand the information that's in UniPhi first, but the ability then to pull that information out and analyze it in this product is pretty much endless. Equally, from a visualization perspective, I'm a global coffee company, don't know who that could be, and I can see the activity going on globally on my particular projects. I can then drill in on this, and actually a quicker way to do that would be to even select the locations that I want to analyze. And these are the 3 that were in my program, and it instantly goes down into the streets, and I can hover on the corners where they actually operate, and it comes up with some nice little information around that particular project. It's got 1 project there. The pie chart means we've got 2 going into this one. We've got our signage and we've got our coffee machine upgrade. The budgets are there and the baseline finish dates are there. And we've got that wherever we go. So from an extremely high level globalized view, which I can get to back by selecting all again, I can drill in and have a look at what's going on in the locations that I'm interested in. Now, whether you manually select those locations or aggregate in another way by looking at sectors and project types, again, that's as simple as dragging across those elements from the project endpoint. You'll see that the little yellow highlights is showing what endpoints you're actually using in this particular analysis. Okay. Once I'm happy with those charts, and I want actually my organization to access this, I would publish this information. And it's as simple as clicking the little publish flag here. This is obviously Microsoft platform, and what we're publishing is into the Microsoft Azure hosted environment. Your organization would have a workspace, and you would have your own workspace within that. And that's where your destination is. So this is getting it off my desktop. This is a PowerBI desktop product. It's all being run locally on my machine, and actually sharing that with people is problematic, to an environment where I can basically share this information with anyone. So that's now going from my desktop up into the cloud, and it'll give me a URL to access in a moment. And you'll be able to click on that URL, which it's done now. And so that previous application was about the setup. That was like getting the dashboards that you want and doing ad hoc analysis. Someone comes to you with a query, you're the analyst in that area. You just go in and analyze it. You can see all the tabs are here along here, and I can click timeline, and that timeline graph will show up again. I can click summary, and summary data is there. And that will refresh in the same way. If I hit refresh, it'll draw from UniPhi. Desktop doesn't need to be there. And you can enable the filtering layers to come in here if you set them up, and people can put their own filters. This has got a slicer embedded within it, so you can actually click that and just say, show me the commercial projects, and the dashboard updates with all the commercial projects. These are actually quite interactive as well. If I wanted to see commercial new build, I can just click on the new build, and it then gives me the new build profile. If you wanted that to not highlight but to filter, you can change that in the desktop before you publish it. And instead of just giving you the sort of, there's 37 new build projects, and these are the new build with dark red ones here, it'll just filter out the others and give you the answer. So it's up to you how to do that. And so, that's now published as far as the first step goes, and it's ready to be shared with people within the area of the business that you want to share them, which could be external, it could be internal, but it's not quite available to them yet. There is one more element, and that is through this share function. So once you've got the workspaces set up correctly, you can then share that information with people who are in the organization by giving them access through there, or by emailing them. Equally, these workspaces can become public to your organization workspaces if you've got that relationship set up. That's something that you have to organize with Microsoft around hosting this sort of stuff. But as a minimum, you can publish to this space and then share via email to specific people as needs be. So I'm going to try and explain that in a graphical form back in the PowerPoint slide now, and then I'm going to finish the webinar by creating a new report from scratch. And it has a little bit of an anecdote, a backstory for what happened to it and how it came about. Okay, so how does the data flow from UniPhi to Power BI? So here we've got our UniPhi cloud with our big database and large data sets. And we've got our API that I referenced, pulling the data out of UniPhi and presenting it to Power BI on the desktop. So this is a laptop, but desktop, basically for it to analyze in the way that I demonstrated previously. We then publish that information to our workspace and then share that information with others who can then access it anywhere they like on any device. You can see there's a laptop, there's printed, and there's a little mobile phone there in that image. There are cost implications on all of that, as usual. To access the UniPhi API through Power BI Desktop, you need to have a Program Manager subscription. And when you first connect to Power BI, when we share you our sort of standard file, you will be required to log in with your usual login, either Windows Authentication or Forms, depending on what type of deployment you have. The Power BI Desktop license is free, so you can download that and do what I was doing. Everything I've done in this presentation so far can be done for free. But once you publish to the Power BI workspace, you need to have a pro subscription to be able to share that information. And the people accessing that information need to have a pro subscription as well. So that's $12.50 per month at the moment, and that's a Microsoft subscription fee. It's not a fee to UniPhi. So that's something that would have to be discussed within your organisation, how you wanted to share this information. You can embed Power BI Desktop in PowerPoint for presentations. You can also publish to a PowerPoint presentation a Power BI Desktop analysis. And of course, you could just write up the report of what you found out as well when doing analysis. But obviously, ultimately, if you're going to enable and empower other people to access the reports that you generate, they're going to need to have those subscriptions. Feel free to email me any questions outside of this webinar to discuss any of that. We'll be supporting and documenting all of this in greater detail, ready for our production version of the Power BI API and file in around on the 1st of November. Okay. So now let's see how bad I can be at this and see how easy it is and do something from scratch. So I've just clicked the little plus down the bottom. I've got a blank canvas here, but I have all my endpoints already created. And so I'm ready to pull data from UniPhi and do something. Now, the backstory to this is a request that came in from a client. I'm actually going to run the report first. So in UniPhi, we have a pretty cool report that was actually built in 2007 to support a major client. We had the CEO designed it, actually, and it was a pretty smart fella and liked looking at financial forecasts to determine workload. And so this report's called Forward Workload by Currency. And what it does is it gives you a rolling 12-month period of forecasted cash flow, but against service codes. So this was a PMQS business, and they had other service lines as well. So they would set up, cost planning, post-contract type services. And by looking at the value of money against those services, he could determine how many people he needed to deliver those services. So this is the old UniPhi report that ran for them successfully. Never had anything else. That's all they did. Now, I extended that a little bit because I use it myself for our own purposes, where you could see the projects that made up that. So you run this one, it's the same report, but what it does is it puts the projects underneath each service code. So service code first, and then projects, and just gives you an idea of validate what projects they are, and if you know the business that you're working in, you can kind of work out what that project entails and what the scope of work is for that delivery. However, we had another client come to us and they wanted it by project manager. And they wanted it firstly just to have the project manager's workload, then they wanted the project manager's workload with the projects underneath them, and then they wanted it by life cycle phase. And it was like, okay, we estimated, about $1,000 a report. It's going to be about $4,000 to give them the full reports that they wanted, because it's not easy to build these reports with SQL queries and testing them and getting them right and all the rest of it. And then I went into Power BI on the same day and I built it in, I think, about 10 minutes. We'll see if I've improved. So what we need to do is we're going to be getting cash flow information. So funnily enough, we would go into the cash flow endpoint. And a lot of the endpoints have bits of metadata that we think would be most prevalent. So for example, they already have the project name. They have the chart of accounts embedded in them. So you don't need to go to the other endpoints necessarily to pull that data in. It's only when you need information beyond that you would. And what I'm going to do is, if I was to do all four on the one page, I'm going to need the same chart of account filtering for the page. So you've got these page filters here, page level filters. That means the filter will apply to everything on that page. You can do report level filter, means that every single tab down the bottom would be having that filter applied to it. So I'm going to start off by bringing in my chart of accounts description, and I'm going to do it on the one called, where is it down the bottom, I think, revenue consulting. And that's one of the challenges of the presentation database. The data's not as rich as having all of those people beavering away. This is just a few of our consultants, when they've got time and can handle the boredom of going in and manually creating data, we get data into our presentation system. So you'll have much more fun than this. And so I've selected that, and that's going to apply to every single visualization in this page. The other trick is that UniPhi's chart of accounts is a hierarchy. And depending on what you're trying to do, to make sure you get all the data, you want to sort of standardize the hierarchy. You can use the drill-in function within Power BI to drill in if you need to. But the safest way to do things is to then go to the account code level, pull that in as a page level filter so you can't go wrong, and then you can see account code filter there. It is a little bit tight to work with. I can give you some extra room, and then we can move it back when we get to the visualizations. And then I'm just going to basic filter that on level 1. Level 1's the highest level. Everything rolls up to level 1, so that'll make sure that we've got all of our information correctly. Now, we are rolling out training and documentation to support this from the 1st of November, so don't stress. It's not that complicated once you get your head around it, and you'll be off and running. So now I'm happy with that. I can go and start bringing in information. So it's a forecast. I'm obviously going to need forecast data. I'm just going to drag that in. They wanted to know the projects that forecast belongs to. I've got project name down here, and so I can just bring that in there. So you can see now we've got our projects, and we've got the summed up forecast for those projects. Now those projects are updated month by month, and so what I'd want to do is get the period end date in there as well. I'll put that between forecast and period. PowerBI, once it is a date, has this interesting hierarchical capability to it. You can just make it an end date if you wish. I'll leave it at year, quarter, month, day for now, and you'll see how that relates later. And so if I was to, so at the moment I'm in the table view of the data. I can see the data coming in on the table view. I could pivot that and have my dates as the columns, and I've now got pretty much that forward workload by project that I was showing you before, just without the account codes. If I was to then come in up here and select account code description, and put that above, we would now have project, which is our top level. So I'd need to change our level hierarchy, which I had before, to get rid of that filter. And then there's exactly the same as the forward workload I had before. You can see that it doesn't have the projects yet, but it has this drill down capability. So if I was to select drill down on rows and do the little hierarchical drill down, it'll then have code and then project. And so that's now replicated the chart that I had in the other UniPhi report. I can focus mode this so you guys can all see it. And if I change it to columns, I can then drill in on the period. So you keep going until you get to months, and you get that sort of stuff happening. They wanted people, so that's number 1. I can copy that so that all the data is already there, and now I need to bring people in. So I probably don't want code in this one, so I'm going to get rid of the code. I'm going to put that project level account code filter in again, and just select that as level 1, and then I'm going to get people into it. And the people come from a different endpoint, so I have to go out of my cash flow endpoint, and I want their role, so it's person role. Hopefully person role makes sense. I need people who are project managers. And what it will do is it won't filter any of the data, it will just display the data that those people are project managers on. So if I was to put into my filter here the role and select project manager, and then just put the person's name up here underneath project, or above project, let's say, I now have, and again, drill in by row, keep the hierarchy. Bernard and his 1 project, Brad, and their 3. Again, I can pop that up and so we can see. And that's their first, that's actually 2 of their reports. One was basically to have it just for person, which if I go back up like that, I get it just for person. And if I drill in like that, I get it for person and project. Done. The other one was by life cycle. Instead, I'd create the thing again, and in the project endpoint down here, you'll see current phase, and you would just drag current phase description in, and you would have that one as well. So yeah, about 10 minutes to do what would have cost $4,000 in the old school. And then once you've got the data like that, you can then just start to play around with visualizing it. So I might do a line and bar chart. There it is there. I can see here what other things are about. I can do like a Z-axis Y line if there's a budget I wanted to drag in there. I can bring that in and it'll be a Y. I can come back to my cash flow and select budget as a line value. It puts that in instantaneously. And I could break up my column series into sectors, and that means that I'll get different colors on the chart. So I come into the project, I scroll down, and sector, so now we've got different colors, unfortunately dominated by commercial, but you get the picture. And I can actually see that information as a close-up visualization with show data underneath, and I've got it all there. And can see the two in parallel, the actual graph and the data that it's graphing. So yeah, very quick, very simple, access to your data, find out information that you never knew existed, and start to tell people about it. And that's it. I'll stop the recording.